Before we begin, let's give a shout out to our sponsor, the folks who help bring this episode of Park People to you, BCI Burke. Play is where development soars and communities come together. At BCI Burke, we believe outdoor spaces should be thoughtfully designed, built to last, and welcoming to everyone. Because when design is intentional, people feel it. Learn more at bciburke.com. Hey, I'm Rodney Oth. Welcome to the Park People podcast. We are here with Rich DePalma, who's a principal at FGM Architects, and Emily Gebhardt, who's a communication specialist for FGM Architects. Park People podcast is put on by PRB Plus Magazine. Emily authored an article with the help of Rich and some other folks in the firm. That's going to be available in our December issue. It's a wonderful, wonderful read. Emily's here to talk a little bit about, the guts of that article, why you might be interested in looking it up, and then Rich is going to jump in as necessary with some details. So, Emily, thanks for joining us today. How are you holding up?
Thanks, Rodney. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. Rich, thanks for joining us. So, Emily, go ahead. Why don't you give us the 30,000-foot view, high points of the article, and why folks might of course be interested in reading it, and then we'll dig into some of the details.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Rodney. This is an article. It was a topic that I slowly became more interested in the more I learned about it from some of the different principals and team members we have at FGMA. So this article is called Winning the Vote, basically how to run a successful recreation facilities referendum. Let me speak one really quickly just to what got me interested in this, is that as, I don't want to sound too basic here, but as a resident of my town, who enjoys recreational facilities, I take my kids to, lessons, parks programs, save my life. So for me, really understanding this is kind of a newer topic for me to learn, how to understand how these bond referendums get through, right? What are the details of making this vision of a project or multiple projects come to fruition, and how can an architecture firm, how can architects, how can our partners help said town and council and committees get this vision through. So
yeah, it's about telling the story, right? Like, how do you tell the story, right? And
exactly.
how do you use the story to influence people to make a good, a decision that's in their best interest,
Right.
Which is, sometimes difficult, right? There's a lot of noise out there. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt, but go ahead. Tell us how
I love it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. It's storytelling, communications, if you will. And at FGMA, we've done a lot of supporting on I'd say more on the front end of referendum process, the planning, master planning, studies. I'm sure Rich can talk more about the details of what we've done in the past. But that there's really a lot of creative ways to go about getting voters on board and educating and doing how do I say this? I'm losing my train of thought here, guys.
No, that's okay. I think we understand.
Yeah.
So let me ask Rich. Let me ask you a question real quick.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about this, right? Like, you had some tough votes go here in Texas here recently. We talked about that before we jumped on the call. What have you found, to be super effective? Like, is there any toolkit that you've discovered that, hey, these are the kind of our go-to tools, or is it really unique to each individual project?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rodney. It really does depend upon the project, but communication is always going to be key, and the population that you reach. So who are the stakeholders in the community that you need to bring into the project? And if it's a municipal or a park district project, you got to bring in everybody, right? Because they're going to benefit from that asset. And often what you'll see is the highest hands, loudest voices that are engaged within the process, the one who is already on that trail system, who's already on, at the aquatics, and they're voicing we want more aquatics and more trails. But our challenge is we're looking at the data, if it's health data or lower socioeconomic neighborhoods, folks who may not be seen when we're going through this engagement typically, and reaching out to them and bringing out. So now all of a sudden we can truly impact the health indicators and wellness indicators. NRPA has 7 dimensions of wellness that they've been promoting, and so with that, how are we going to affect not just social and physical and mental, but also the economic, emotional, cultural, environmental health with these projects and who we're reaching out to. So when you look at the toolkit, there's great online tools like Social Pinpoint, but the data set itself is where we find these people, right? And so when we're looking at it, Opportunity Atlas has a great tool. I highly recommend all park professionals and engagement professionals look at that. The other one is, of course, here.
And I'm sorry, I'm not familiar. What is Opportunity Analysis? What is that?
Yeah, so it's a website. So it's opportunityatlas.org. And if you go to the website, you can go ahead and parse out your various data. So it's pulling census data and then other data, and it's doing at the census tract level. And Rodney, that's so important when we're doing engagement, because if you just do it, say, by zip code, then you're going to lose communities that there's a community out here. I'm in Austin, Texas, and it's very affluent, but it's attached to, it's in the same zip code. But it's also attached to a community that has, lower socioeconomic, and they're on public housing. And so they get lost with the influence of the zip code. When you go to the tract level, then you're also identifying, we need to make sure these folks are included in the conversation, because we want to, when we look at Parks and Rec as Park and Rec professionals, we want to impact community wellness. Right, that's one of the ways we do it, and whether it's passive or active recreation, that is our laser point. We don't want to necessarily do things like we've always done. Do things that we always done. We're going to continue to have like 65 to 70% of the population satisfied with recreational opportunities. We want, just like we have the 10-minute walk to a park. We want, that's measurable. We want to get that number who's actually engaging with Parks and Rec, and so that engagement is key.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? Because as you started the conversation, both Emily and you kind of have a vocal minority, right? Super engaged users. They want to push something through that is a passion of theirs, But when you start counting votes, there's a whole hidden majority that may not be as interested in that, or you may need to modify that aquatics need, broaden it maybe, right? So that it appeals to people who are not lap swimmers for it, or whatever the case might be, right? Like,
Rodney, that's a great point. You want to find it, you're trying to create this active and passive recreation opportunity that appeals to the broadest group of folks. One, it's the community health, but you're talking about something that's very pragmatic. You're talking about how to pass the bond, right? And if you do a spatial analysis, and we're on a Park and Rec or any other sort of municipal project or park district project, if you looked at where the project is and your yes votes, you're going to find, of course, the highest percentage of votes where the project is. And as you span out, you're going to find a lower percentage of votes. And you're trying to move the needle, but there is that strategy, and like, how are you going to win the election? Because the best of idea just stays on paper if you don't win at the ballot box.
So we've had a recreation project that it took multiple attempts right here, and in my experience, in different cities, is I've never really seen something pass the first time. Does it happen? I mean, is it rare is it as rare as my experience has been that some of these things pass the first time, or is it kind of, you should go into it knowing that you've got to build up some steam?
That's a fantastic question. Emily, you want me to jump in on this one?
Yeah, I'll start, but yeah, Rich, you can kind of fill in the most of it. I think the smartest way to approach this is not going to referendum until you really know big asterisk, right? You can never know 100%, but until you really know what you're looking at here, I don't
So is there a
personally know.
danger in going too early? I mean, if you do you poison
There
can you
is.
poison the well? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but to what your experience as far as multiple attempts to pass the bond referendum, you actually don't see more than the two. Um,
Hmm.
we have a client here in Texas who went out, and there were only two park and rec bonds throughout the state a year ago that failed. They made some adjustments, and we weren't running their bond referendum, but I gave them some advice afterwards, and how much they implemented it, I'm not sure, but I will tell you that they passed the second time around, and they were only one of two that passed statewide of park and rec referendums. So it had flipped on the other side. So it is a challenge. Ideally, here's the ideal situation. You have a citizens group. Everybody's, meeting early on. They're identifying whether it's at an apartment level or citywide level or park district, whatever. It's coming in. They get all the data. They have here's the framework. Here's how much we can do without it affecting the tax rating. This is what our number is for not affecting the impacted tax rate. Basically, upping your mill, so
Right.
you're going for additional penny or not. And we're going to use the new debt from the debt we've already paid off. And having all that information, and then the priorities, like this is what the community landscape looks like. And so, here's our health, here's our veterans, here's our seniors, this is where everybody's located, this is the gap in services that we currently have. And then starting off with that conversation early on. And as much as when you can deliver that recommendation to the governing authority, if that's your council, earlier the better, because now the community, there's time in order to educate the community.
Yeah, and it's
And
and I'm assuming part of education is like it seems to me from the voter side, like building trust is the issue, right? Like, and social media doesn't it helps and hurts, right? Because there's always somebody who's saying there's no way this isn't going to raise our tax. Have you done the math? I
yeah,
haven't, but I'm just assuming.
right. The trust is definitely there. And just for the community, whoever's listening on the other side, and then they're like, God, I have to go. We need to go to a bond. What am I going to do? I don't feel really comfortable. I'm nervous. I have some anxiety about it. It's completely normal. I have been part of literally billion dollar bond campaigns, and I've been as low as 600 million. Right now, I'm on the bond committee for the city of Austin on the committee side, and it is nerve wracking when you're working on this. You don't want to let down that, whether if it's a school district, all the students, or if it's seniors or people looking for affordable housing, whatever it is. But you can only do what you can do. But that is that education, meeting with stakeholder groups afterwards, some things that you can do. And when you're looking at the public entity, it's just also important that you are just educating. If you are employed by the government entity, you can only educate and inform. You cannot advocate. I don't care where in the state you are, where in the US you are. That is first and foremost. And then hopefully somebody who's able to do the advocacy forms a political action committee, and they really start tying into the chamber and the PTAs and your neighborhood association, start writing editorial. Beforehand, though, what you can do is the wonderful signs. You can start building community support. Like today, everybody should be doing it. We should have, and if you're a smaller community, like I founded Friends of Dick Nichols Park, back about 20 years ago. And so I love Dick Nichols Park. I'm now chair or president of Barton Springs Conservancy. So I love Barton Springs Pool. And have that out there, and really create that wonderful support. And that can happen years before bond referendum comes up. And then it's about what you've delivered in the past. Were you successful in delivering the projects that you promised to the voters? And if not, then why? Make sure that there's a really valid reason why it wasn't delivered. And maybe it was the pandemic, and coming out of the pandemic, the costs were just so much that it no longer penciled out. But make sure you're communicating that.
So take me through, if you guys can, whoever wants to talk, just let's go through the arc of a project from, I come to, so the first step is probably figuring out who your partners are going to be, right? Like most projects live or die by picking the right partners. So, you know, let's say I come to you guys, I decide that you're going to be a partner in this thing, and here's my idea, you know, what happens? What take it from there and just kind of give me like the bullet points, but you don't have to give me I mean, I know it's a year-long answer if we want to dig into the details, but like
Yeah.
30,000 foot view, like, here's kind of the steps we would follow from beginning to taking it to the voters.
Yeah, love that. Emily,
I was going to give you that one.
okay, sounds good. So it's starting off with if you have any master plans that have already been done, feasibility studies that are already done, we're going to be collecting that information. And this is assuming that we're looking at a number of different projects that we're going to bring forward. The other side would be there's one project, and we have clients that we worked with on just the one pool. Community needed one pool, and they did the feasibility study, get the cost nice and tight, create some conceptual design of what it would look like. But you're taking all that information and then you're bringing it to the voter. I'm not bringing it to the voter, but bringing it to the community and saying, do you like this? If it's a pool, then this design or this design, do you feel comfortable at this price? If it's, if you have all this wonderful aquatic system, all the bells and whistles, and here's what that additional cost would be, and how it translates into your property tax. Or, we want to keep it nice and lean and mean and functional, so it can affect a basic prep program like your early morning lap swimmers and your school.
And in that very first step, when they come with the project, do you guys start by evaluating whether or not it's a good project to begin with?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's always what is your look, and that's part of that feasibility study.
Yeah.
So when they come on, so some communities are long have done the feasibility studies.
Yeah.
It's part of there's
their general planning.
There's 15, yeah. There's 15 feasibility studies they have. They have 4 master plans. They have a long range plan.
Right.
And large municipality, you look at a municipality that's over 350,000. There's going to be so many different plans, and then you're still going out to the community to build a bond program where you have multiple projects. If it's a smaller community, yeah, they have an idea what they want to do. We'll go out, we'll build our team. Our team is going to consist of engineering, like your civil, your MEP. There's going to be somebody for cost estimating that we have in there as well. That could be a GC part, a general contractor partner, or a separate organization that's doing that. And we're going to go out, if it's an existing facility, we're going to do the facilities assessment, say what the condition of the state is right now. This is how much it would get back to fully operational and meeting code. If it is just something that they want to have, then we'll come up with what that site selection would look like, come up with a conceptual plan, and then as we come up with a conceptual plan, that's where we're engaging the public, right? Like, what sort of program do you want to have here? Is it going to be, you want 4 practice lanes for the local high school and middle school? Or do you want to have the lazy river, whatever it is, if you want a space for birthday parties and coming out into I'm just using aquatics as an example.
Yeah, right.
But, we have we're doing a very large 140,000 square foot rec center right now. And so it's that similar process, are we doing birthday parties? Are we, do we want an adventure track that's within the facility? What does your summer program look like after school when your seniors, are they using the space? You want to impact your, do dietary training and have a training kitchen. There's a lot of different opportunities and therapy rooms and whatnot, and different partners that we can access. And Rodney, to that point, one of the things that community could really do, what everybody's listening to me and they're like, yes, Rich, we already know all this. If they're on the side, here's what they don't know. Go out as soon as you engage the architect, put out an RFI, a request for information of potential partners relating to a potential future X, whatever the X is. If it's a senior center, if it's a recreation center, and see what you come back with from the community, that you might have some really strategic partners. Now, they're going to need space that's designed for how they implement their program. They may be.
You mean like maybe there's a physical therapy firm that wants to run therapy sessions and maybe they need a 10 by 10 space for patients or something. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that could be a stretch studio. It could be a personal training space. It could be a smoothie shop. It could be just somebody who's coming in wants to teach these specific sort of classes. So you have a multifunctional room. Maybe it's sensory therapy, sound therapy, and somebody wants, they can do that programming. Because one of the things that's always the biggest challenge, and this is now I got park directors shaking their head yes right now. We build a new facility, but we don't have additional monies, or we have limited additional monies for the FTEs in order to operate those programs. So now you're solving part of that problem, and you're also potentially generating some additional revenue where there's a revenue share associated with it if there's paid classes. But get that early on, and that can inform the programming and the design of that space that you're looking at, whether it's an aquatics facility or whether it is a rec or senior center.
Yeah, that's smart. That's smart. I understand that. Yeah. So what would be if somebody was relatively new to this, or maybe they haven't had success in the past and they want to change their luck, what would be like a best practices for like, choosing the right partners? What are you looking for? Are there any red flags that jump out? Like, hey, if you hear this, probably slightly, move in a different direction. Like, it's kind of a weird question, but it's a salesy question. But
it actually makes a lot of sense to me, because the question I always have from the other side for the client is, what is the purpose of this initiative, this bond, this project? Are we looking at economic development? Economic development that we're creating a sports park and that we're wanting to go ahead and have maybe a third party operator, and we're going to try to do some local tourist based. Right, we want tournaments coming in from the region, and that's how we want that activation. And then we want our residents to be able to use it when it's not being scheduled out. So is it economic development? Is it community based? Community based meaning like, how do we actually move the needles on the wellness? Is it consensus based, which is the highest hands, loudest voices? We want to silence those folks who keep coming to the door and coming to council meeting. Or is it a hybrid of something like that? Or is it mirroring what the strategic direction of the city is? So every city has a strategic plan, at least it should. And so is it pointing to that strategic plan? And that's what I want to know. And I say on the city side, you figure it out first, or figure out with an architect who can guide you through that process and how you communicate it to your governing body, whether it's a park district or a city council, and say, how guide them through what that conversation looks like, get them to commit. I would start it off with just, here is what our community looks like. I'm huge in showing, here's the profile of your community. This is the good and the challenges. So everybody's aware of the opportunity there. And then whatever the decision is, then we just go through and run with it. But I would want, if I'm on the city side, and I used to be vice chair of the Parks Board for the city of Austin for 7.5 years, I absolutely want a long range viewpoint. I want a holistic lens on how we're going to communicate. Are they going to help me communicate with the community when I'm taking constituent call? So they get what we're trying to do. Maybe they don't necessarily agree, but they know that there is an intentionality to it.
Okay, interesting. Emily, we've kind of unintentionally shuttled you to the side here. We didn't mean to.
No, I love it. This is why I brought Rich along. He's
okay.
He's filled with knowledge.
Is there anything we should have asked that from your side of the fence that we didn't hit on? I kind of drilled down on Rich there a little bit. Sorry, Rich.
No, it's all great.
The one thing that I found interesting, and Rich, feel free to hop in at any point, was that this is generalization, mind you, but that we're seeing a lot more larger bonds recently with multiple projects for that community. And that can be a really strategic way to to touch everyone in the community, and for every resident, every person in that town or city to see themselves in the bond again, to put themselves, um, in the
Do you
story.
think people are doing that? So obviously there's the component of you affect more of your population positively because you might have projects in every quadrant or something, right? But
Yeah.
are people also packaging it because you can only go to the well so many times and then maybe it's better to have one big, is that why the trend is there, is have one big referendum or one big bond versus multiple smaller bonds as projects come along? Or is that not really part of the trend? Is it just, you know, the
Great
initial
question. No,
conversation there?
yeah, that's a great question. I guess the way I had seen it is it was more geared towards making sure more people are included in the
Hmm.
story, and
Hmm.
benefiting from that bond. But Rich, feel free to, if you have a different point of view, I'd love to hear that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, when we see larger bonds, say than 10 years ago, it's really because the cost of construction and any of the capital projects are that much more. And
Yeah.
people are really shocked when, you know, what it takes to build something and design something. And you got to remember, you're also looking at cost escalation. So if I'm planning right now, and here's another thing for your architect, when you're folks who are working with the architects, make sure you're getting cost escalations for, okay, here's what the cost of the project is right now, but what is it going to be when the bond passes, and what's going to be a year after, or you know, when it's let, if it's going to be held off for a little bit before it's actually let through an RFQ process or RFP process, than what's going to go in construction. Make sure you feel really tight with those
What options
numbers.
do you have when you run into cost, even if you've done that calculation, now you're
Yeah,
above them. We had a little thing here in our town where we built a library and it just bad luck, right? The bond,
yeah,
everything passed pre-COVID. They decided to go forward with it regardless. In this little town, getting materials up here, up in the mountains was already tough, and it
yeah,
became literally the cost literally doubled. Like it was
yeah,
crazy, and they just dug deep and paid it because there wasn't anything. They had some cost escalators in there of what it could be, and here's the range, right? But it was so just out of their control, so far above their thing, right? Do people just back off projects then, or do they,
It really,
how do you handle that?
yeah, it really depends upon the community. If you're large enough where you can go ahead and find the additional funding. It also depends upon what your state level regulatory like authority, like what the law allows you to do. In
Okay, gotcha.
Texas, it's much more strict. As a matter of fact, we can't have one big bond. We actually have to break up. Rec has to be a separate bond. Now you can put land acquisition and your major capital projects and list everything, but then you have to have a separate library bond. You have a separate public safety.
Okay.
And then our school districts are similar. Buses are separate, renovations are separate. If it's fine arts, that's separate. Athletics is separate.
Hmm.
So it makes a challenge. I liked it in the old days where you can bring it all together, one big bond. We're one family. My kid
Yeah.
doesn't do X, Y, Z, but I do this one, and so we're coming together. Um, if you're looking for the additional monies, what often happens is scope gets cut, the size of the
Yeah.
facility. You phase the project where you're able to design it where, okay, now um, 2/3 of the building is getting done, and you're setting it up when there's a future phase 3 on new funding.
Hmm.
Um, or you're working, I mean, I'll tell you, I'm over alternative funding. That's actually what my background is. I'm not an architect. I just get to play one at conferences and on podcasts. But mine is public affairs and alternative funding. And so we look at that community and we look at whether there's energy savings performance contracting, lease purchase agreements. I have probably about 120 different things that I look at, is it a public-private partnership or bringing this to bear?
Hmm.
Is it if there's a PID, public improvement district or a tax increment zone? Um, Really trying to be creative with the solutions that we bring forward to the client.
Hmm. Okay. Well, very interesting. I think that's probably a good place to take a pause, I always give you guys one, I give all of our uh, guests one get out of jail free card because to make up for me not asking the right questions. So if you were sitting in my chair, is there anything I should have asked you guys that I didn't? Anything that is obvious that if somebody more intelligent than me is listening to this is yelling at me right now, why didn't you ask this?
Rodney, I can bore somebody at a cocktail event because I love talking about this so much. I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, the only thing I would say is the other data set, because I am a data guy, Trust for Public Land, their data set that they have also when you're looking at pockets of community, take a look at that. I feel bad I didn't bring that up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their Park Serve data set.
Yeah, right. It's funny because we could do a whole conversation about land trust. We have a whole lot of stuff that's happening here in our little town. It's happening across the country of unique and creative ways to, let people use their private land, but make sure that it stays, in a trust down the road, right? And
Yep.
Which I think is kind of what you're talking about, except that you're talking about a database probably of what already exists, right?
Well, the Park Serve one is, I have a copy of it right here. And so this is like equity information. There's different data sets that you can query. So this is giving you that community profile. I'm so big on that early end of identifying the community needs to help inform the conversations with your governing people. And then on the architecture side, whatever they come up with, that's what we're running with. That's the, that we've got our answer and we move forward.
Yeah.
But I love what you're on land and conservation. I mean, I think that is a great way for large parcels of land to be able to protect whether there's a public benefit, whether there's a public access and easement to it or not. It's great. But if not, then it still protects a natural open space.
Yeah. They're hard to put together, though.
They are very hard to put together. One of the things, we do a lot of public-private partnerships, and matter of fact, our 140,000 square foot rec center is part of a large P3 project. And,
nice.
And so we're always happy to have those conversations. If anybody wants to reach out, I'm probably the most Googleable person you can find.
That's good. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much, and guys and gals. Thanks very much for spending the time with us today, and we appreciate it. The December issue is out, and Emily's story is online at prbplus.com right now, and it's a little deeper dive than what we talked about. So I invite everybody who's listening to go take a read. You guys have a great Christmas.
Thanks, Rodney.
Thank you so much, Rodney. Really appreciate it.
Take care of yourselves.
See you.